On behalf of Governor Andy Beshear and the Justice and Public Safety Cabinet, I want to thank you for all that you do to prepare the children of our Commonwealth for their futures. One of the critical responsibilities that we have is to ensure the safety of our schools and the children in our care. We at the Department of Criminal Justice Training have partnered with the Kentucky Center for School Safety, the Kentucky Department of Education, and the Kentucky State Police to provide this training that will show you how to prepare for and what to do if an active shooter event takes place at your school. Over the next hour, you will hear content presented from several experts in their fields who have worked hard to identify the information that you need to know to stay safe. If you are a seasoned educator, most of this information will be a refresher for you. For those of you who are new to the field, we hope this training will help you understand the elements that you need to create your plan. I encourage everyone to take this training and build upon it, working together with your staff to create, practice, and commit to memory solid plans of action in case of the unimaginable.
Mandates and procedures come from the passing of the School Safety and Resiliency Act of 2019 and the subsequent passing of Senate Bill 8 in 2020. These mandates are set forth in the bill, and they come from past shooting incidents. They come from research on how to protect students, how to protect staff, and this research is driven to have these mandates of why we're doing what we're doing to protect our schools and protect our staff. The way the law is written out is a layered approach to security and safety. A lot of questions on why do we lock interior doors during instructional time? Well, that's part of the layer. The layer starts out with our exterior doors. The bill states that we have to maintain and control access of all exterior doors. You have to have a buzzer on the front door. That's to make sure that we know who's walking in or stepping into our building. We have to check IDs to verify who's in the building. We ask the person why they're there. That's layers of security. If you have a vestibule or a locked door, even to get you into the school. And then, of course, the final layer of that security is the locking of your doors during instructional time, or classroom doors during instructional time. So that is why those things are specifically laid out in the law as that layered security approach. And it's point proven that locking of those doors is integral in the safety of our students, and it has to become a reality, and it has to become a routine for us to do that. And I think the more that we do it, the quicker we get involved in it, the quicker it will become routine and it will become the new normal. We've heard a lot about the new normal this year, and that's one of those things that we know that it works, and we have to continue to do it. The great thing is that our compliance officers have been all over the state, and the more we go look at schools, the more this is becoming the new normal, the more the kids realize what they need to do, the more teachers realize what they need to do. And some of our best safety experts are our kids. Our kids are reminding teachers, well, we need to lock the door. Or when they go to the restroom, they know to pull that door behind them. So they're taking a lot of responsibility for their own safety by knowing what the rules are. And we all know that kids need rules, and we learn how to follow the rules when we're in school, and that's one of the rules that we've got to follow, and it's working out very well. Had some critics talk about this layered approach and locking doors and checking IDs and things like that make it more of a confined feeling for our students. I disagree with that. I feel like that if you want to call it confined, I'm going to say that we're hugging those kids tighter. And the fact that we know this is because our compliance officers have been in schools, and the kids are the ones taking responsibility for their own safety. They're the ones pointing out people that do not have a visitor's tag on. They're the ones that are saying we need to make sure and lock our door when class starts. And so I don't feel like, and I haven't seen that the kids feel like it's more confining, other than they know they're feeling safer. They know those rules are there for them and for their teachers, and they know that there's bad things out there, and that those rules and layered protection is all for them. So I truly believe that it's less of a confined as otherwise we're just holding our kids tighter. And that's the way that our teachers are doing a fantastic job of relaying that. And our teachers don't want our kids to feel unsafe, or our teachers don't want our kids to feel like they're, confined. And they're working really well with them, and it's working out very well. Speaking about the School Safety and Resiliency Act and SB 8, which was a cleanup portion of that for 2020, School Safety and Resiliency Act is not an active shooter bill. It includes a lot of prevention. It includes a lot of mental health. It includes threat assessment. It includes locking of doors. It includes emergency plans. There's a lot of things that it includes. A small portion of it is active shooter training, which is what you're watching right now. Some of the changes that we've made from last year's video is we've been able to speak to a lot of elementary, middle, and high school, and we've asked a lot of questions about what we missed in the last video, or what we need to add to this video, or what questions did they leave the room with. And this is a 60-minute video. You are not going to learn everything you need to know about active shooter event in 60 minutes. What this video is designed to do is to spark conversation on how you will respond to an active shooter in your building. You're going to see examples that are set forth in our filming of this that will work, but may not work for your particular school. There's over 1,400 schools in the state of Kentucky. That means there's all different types of kids, buildings, teachers. You have to find out what your plan is, and this video should work as a spark to get conversations going. We hope you all are watching this in a large room, and that when you have questions, questions can be addressed and answered, and you can work out a plan not only for the school, but your personal plan on what you're going to do if there's an active shooter in your school.
An active shooter situation is an individual who is actively trying to kill or cause physical injury to someone that can, in an incident that contains a large amount of victims and is ongoing when law enforcement arrives. That's how we classify what an active shooter is. So it's different from what people may respond to initially, but with it ongoing and the large number of victims is really what makes it what we classify as an active shooter. Typically, active shooters that we have seen so far last 3 to 8 minutes. What we have seen, use for example Sandy Hook. Sandy Hook was done in roughly 3 minutes of time. Here in our own state, we had one that lasted probably no more than 8 minutes. So that typical 3 to 8 minutes. And then according to FBI statistics that we pulled up from 2013, 66% of the active shooter incidents were over in 5 minutes or less. It's from the beginning of the shots to when the shooter is done shooting. Doesn't include the law enforcement response time because that's going to be very time consuming and doing searches of the schools. But what's going to happen is that initial action of the shooter takes that 3 to 8 minutes.
And a lot of that is going to be dependent on how prepared that school is. If a school is very prepared, they're locking doors, they have very good lockdown procedures in place, that active shooter situation can last a very short duration of time based upon being prepared, making sure that all the students are prepared, kind of building a software package where the kids know if something happens, they know exactly how to act and when to act, and that can mitigate whether students are students or if they're victims.
What was that?
You're going to hear obviously a lot of loud noises. They may be misconstrued as balloons being popped or firecrackers, but we have to be programmed to know if we hear those things that aren't normal to hear throughout the school day, it's better to err on the side of caution and go ahead and get to a lockdown procedure. So you're going to hear things like gunfire. You may hear screaming, especially if this person has a vendetta or they're trying to get back at people. You're going to hear a lot of things that just aren't normal to the school day is what you're going to hear.
The actions of the shooter themselves, they're looking for large areas. They're going to look for a spot where they can find the most targets of opportunity for them. What they are looking for is a high casualty count. They are looking for easy access to people. When they're going through things, they want the path of least resistance. They want where they can go to get what they want out of that done. So they're looking for that easiest piece to get to. So.
We're pushing, and obviously it's law, but we're pushing on the teachers to lock the doors during periods of instruction. Well, we know based upon data, based upon prior events that's happened, not just in the U.S., but across the world, across the globe, where active shooters are looking, like Brian said, looking for the path of least resistance. We've noticed that if a door is closed, they're not really filling on that door to see if they can make entry. They are looking for easy, highly visible targets to be able to make them victims. So that's one of the things that obviously we're pushing is for teachers to lock the doors during periods of instruction. That way we can go ahead and we can stop this from happening. We can make sure that shooter moves on to the next point, and hopefully they have no victims are to be found and they just leave the premises.
Extensive research has shown that locked doors do save lives. In the event of an active shooter situation, the things that we can do prior to an event unfolding really is going to save us time moving forward. We've seen that active shooters are looking for victims, people that are in the open, and rarely do they take the time to try to get into a locked door. What we're really looking for is the additional time to keep people safe until law enforcement arrives. Many of these instances in active shooter situations, they occur very rapidly, and just those small details can save lives. One of the other reasons that we like the doors to be locked, we've talked to teachers who say, I carry a key and I can lock the door. But unfortunately, in a high-stress situation, many of the fine motor skills are lost, and that can be grabbing a specific key, entering it into a key slot, and turning that lock. We don't want to have teachers have to go through this. So as you can imagine, fine motor skills versus major motor skills is what we're looking for. And if you can keep that door locked, you can keep your students safe.
There's no real profile for a school shooter. There are some commonalities that we've heard about and has been reported, such as unlocked firearms in the home, kids who have a propensity for violence, kids who have maybe a mental health issue going on, possibly suicidal. We also know that kids sometimes, would-be shooters, would share information long before they actually do this. And these are not random acts of violence. These are well planned. And so for a school teacher to be able to pick it up like that might be a difficult situation, but this is where we need to get parents involved with some of the things that they might be seeing at home as far as those things are concerned. So it's important to understand that. And there's a connection on this whole thing about relationships. We want the teachers and the kids to have a good, working, harmonious relationship. Now, that being said, if a would-be perpetrator would be sharing that information with a peer, we would hope that peer would go to his or her teacher and say, I'm hearing something, or at least get on our tip line that's sponsored by the Homeland Security folks here in our state that will give us a heads up on something that we could possibly avert some kind of shooting like that.
One of the things I think this bill has really done is it's opened a lot of folks' eyes to how their school is safe, how the security is involved in security with their school. And we really have to talk about student relationships with staff, because I should be speaking to all the staff at the school right now, not just teachers, not just administrators. And we really have to realize that there are kids out there, and you know this, that don't have a relationship with a teacher, they don't have a relationship with an administrator, they don't have a relationship with a coach, but they may have a relationship with a bus driver, they may have a relationship with a cafeteria worker, they may have a relationship with a custodian, they may have a relationship with an SRO. And all staff need to be empowered to say, if they see something, to say something. And we say that a lot, but if a bus driver picks a kid up every day, that's the first person to lay eyes on that student. And if that student's having a bad day or there's something wrong, that bus driver is going to see that. Once that kid gets off the bus, the next person he goes sees is a lunch lady, or breakfast at the cafeteria. That person serves that kid every day, and if there's something wrong or something needs to happen, that person should be empowered to go talk to the staff, talk to their counselors, talk to their mental health, talk to the principal, and they may be able to have that relationship with that student. And I really want to push that safety and security of our school is our relationships we have with our kids. And I know teachers know that, counselors know that, but all staff needs to know that's the main importance of keeping everyone safe, is having those relationships.
One of the most critical things for teachers and administrators and anybody who's on the school grounds on a regular basis in the care of children is having a plan. And we talked about that last year in the video. We can't emphasize that enough. It's that when-then thinking. It's the same thing we teach police officers. And unfortunately, as I said last year, now we got to get into the schools and we got to get our teachers, administrators, we got to work together. We got to collaborate. And that's a term I borrow from teachers. They use it all the time. And we've got to be more effective in that, in terms of saying, hey, here's what we do to handle the most stressful situations that there are in society. And for police officers and teachers alike, being situationally aware is going to be critical. And it's going to be something, a lot of teachers and principals, they do it naturally now with everything that's happened in our world. But I think now more than ever is just having that plan. Coming into the school from different exits and entryways, and knowing, you know, if you're in the lunchroom, if you're on the playground, if you're on the athletic field, knowing those areas very well and knowing that if something happens at that particular point, when you hear those sounds, gunfire, and a lot of people, I can't emphasize enough, and I think if most of the teachers or anybody looks back over the course of our history that this has been happening, people will say, was that balloons? Was that gunfire? Because it's hard for us to truly get in our heads that this is actually happening here. Well, while you're doing that, those are precious seconds. So they happen very quickly, but when you're in that time frame, when the world's crashing down around you and you're seeing things that you never should have seen in the first place, that's going to seem like an eternity. So when we talk about having a plan, it's critical that, you know, for police officers, for teachers, to have that plan in terms of knowing what to do with these students, how to do it, to even think outside the box depending upon the environment that they're in. You know, as far as strongholds in the schools, or picking one point to go to over another, like bathrooms. We know that bathrooms, it's better than standing out in the hallway, but most of these bathrooms are unlocked. They don't have them where they can lock. So if you can pick a classroom over a bathroom, you're much better off. But you got to think ahead. And we know that teachers have mitigated the killings and some of the actions that they've taken in these schools. And in one of the FBI studies, they talked about, they made the comment about active shooting situations, and they talked about the active part of it. And they made a really good statement, and I think it's worth repeating here. You know, the active implies that school administrators and teachers and counselors and whoever may be on that school grounds, it may be civilians and police officers, they can impact the outcome of what happens. Don't take that to mean that they should all fight. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what Ben said before about those layers of protection and putting those things in place beforehand. And it gives them time to think and time to react, time to protect those kids. I can't stress it enough. It's situational awareness. It's knowing where you are, you know, anytime, or being aware of where you are. Let me restate that. Being aware of where you are anytime you're in that building, especially in those areas, those common areas where kids are gathering in the morning or the afternoons. We know from studies that a lot of times that's when these shootings occur. And I think that's one of the toughest places to be. So teachers have to be much more proactive, much more deliberate about thinking, hey, if this breaks loose, I'm going to grab as many kids as I can and we're going here. We're getting out of the line of fire. In one school over in Scotland, the killer entered the school through an unlocked door. He had a plan. He even put earmuffs on. You know, and I often think, what would have happened if some teacher who was situationally aware looked out and said, hey, there's somebody walking toward our school with earmuffs on. You know, that's a clue. It's out of the norm. That's what I'm talking about in terms of situationally aware. But so to get back to my point, he gets back inside that these kindergarten students are being escorted to the gym by their teacher. And one of the things they did, they just dropped down. You know, so he starts shooting and they just dropped down. There was no plan because nobody had ever thought, this was back in, I think, 1996, nobody really thought about these things happening in a school. So they just dropped down to the floor. They did what human beings do naturally without any training. That's that orientation behavior. We actually turn toward the threat and we crouch. And you'll see that in explosions and things like that happen out in society. And we almost got to retrain ourselves to move first, get some cover, and ask questions later. And that's more like the animal kingdom. You know, if you ever watched a cat, if something happens, you see a cat that's scared, that cat jumps first, runs, and then you'll see him peek back around. That's, you know, that's the world's perfect predator there. But human beings were not hardwired like that. So we got to teach ourselves to act differently under these circumstances.
When schools plan for lockdowns, they are planning most of the time, the planning goes on as for the whole school and for the whole district. It's just protocols in a safe school plan. And what we want to talk about today is individual plans in classrooms. It's how you introduce this. It's what little lesson you use, and how do you lessen the anxiety with the students and the staff so that it doesn't have to be anything except knowledge and learning. And then once we know how to do it, it doesn't have to be something that's very high anxiety or stress worthy. Now, there are 4 things. Okay, the first one is age appropriate. Okay, if you've been teaching kindergarten for a lot of years and then you go to the 4th grade, maybe you need to think about how you're going to talk to the students in 4th grade, because that's going to be a little different age appropriate level, developmental level. The next thing is disabilities. Sometimes in your classrooms, you're going to have some mobility disabilities or functional disabilities. And it may be that you are teaching where you have them part of the day and you don't other parts of the day. So maybe you've only had a drill when you didn't have that child in your class. Plan for those possibilities and make sure that your child knows that if they come in your class, they know what to do. Okay, next is second language, okay? If this is if English is the child's second language, but they're pretty good, make sure that the parents know in their home language and that what to do or how to talk to their students to help the students realize it's just safety. It's just something that we do to get into the habit to know what to do if something happens, okay? The last one, there's just 4 of these, and the last one is students or staff that have experienced trauma or high anxiety. And we kind of already know them. We've met our kiddos beginning of school, and we might not know everything behind the scenes, but we know enough about our students that we know to watch for certain things. But we can also do a few things when we introduce the safety practices, that will just kind of lessen it for everyone. But afterwards, if we see that there's a problem with any one student, maybe they need a little extra help, make sure that we get them that extra help, okay? So those are the things that we need to consider when we're looking at a plan for a classroom. I'd like to kind of go through a mock with you just a little bit, just so that you can see the sample of what I would say to kindergarten or 1st grade, okay? First of all, before I get there though, parents need to be informed. Parents don't have to be informed on the day, but they need to know that this is going on at your school, that it is the law, and that even the National Association of School Psychologists say that with practice, we'll get skill. Appropriate practice gives you skill and knowledge that doesn't have to heighten anxiety. It just doesn't have to do that, but you just have to do the practice. So if you put the right things in this note, and we're gonna have some samples for that. If you put the right things in this note, parents will be notified and maybe lessen their anxiety. And that always rubs off on kids, just like this rubs off on kids. Okay, what you do rubs off on kids. Okay, you start with little bitties. You would start with something that's familiar, a familiar question like, or just familiar safety ideas like at home or at school. When you walk across the street, do we hold mommy's hand sometimes? Because that's a safety thing we do. Okay, when do you feel safe, boys and girls? Do you feel safe with mommy, maybe at home? Do you feel safe with daddy at the store? Do you feel safe at school with your teacher? Okay, very good. All right, what makes you feel safe? Because you know that these adults that love and care for you want you to have fun and an exciting time and to always feel safe. So we're going to have to follow some directions. Now, we follow directions in school all the time. So this is just a different kind of a direction we're going to follow, but it's not going to be hard and it's going to be easy to do. Have any of you ever stood up beside your desk and gotten a line? I think you have. Let's see if we can do that really quietly. Okay, so we're going to get up in a line, stand beside our desk, push our chair in. Oh, Keisha, you did such a good job. Boys and girls, could you see how well Keisha did standing next to her desk quietly? She even has her hands folded. Look at there. She's ready for the next instruction I'm going to give. Okay, sometimes, let's sit back down. Sometimes we might have to just be really quiet and still. Can you be quiet and still? Yay, we're quiet and still. Sometimes we might even have to turn the light out. I'm going to go over there. Stay quiet and still. Jamal. Boys and girls, look at Jamal. He's quiet. He's still. He even has his hands folded in front of him. I am so proud of Jamal. He's doing such a great job. Boys and girls, he's doing a great job because we're practicing safety today and he's listening, got those ears open. I see everybody else does too. I'm very proud of you. Now, we might have somebody who cares about us, like the principal or another caring adult, say over the loudspeaker. We know what that is, that loudspeaker. They might say, lockdown drill or lockdown practice. Okay. When they say that, a drill or a practice is like play acting, okay? And we're just going to play act through this. We're going to pretend to do what we need to do to get used to doing this safety practice. All right. When they say that, we're going to get still and quiet. You're so good at that. And then we're going to turn the lights out. And then I have another job. I'm going to close the window blinds, okay? But you're still going to be still and quiet. And then we're all going to get up together and quietly, as quiet as a quiet mouse, we're going to go back to the room where we see that star right here. We're going to have a star, and it's a designated area. That's a hard word. We'll talk about that later. It's a place we're going to be safe. We're going to feel safe when we're in that spot. We're going to go back to that spot. Emily Ann, would you please come and hold my hand? You need to always be right next to me during these safety practices. That's part of your plan. So every time we get ready to go with our plan and go back because we've heard lockdown practice, Emily Ann will stand right by me. And everybody understand? Okay, great. So let's go back there. Quiet, quiet, quiet. Quick, quick, quick. Oh, you did so good. Sit still. Ooh, that was great. Okay, Sue Lynn, you did such a great job. I'm going to let you be the caring adult. You're going to say lockdown when we get back to our seat. Let's go get back to our seat. I'm going to say, okay, we're going to do math. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sue Lynn, lockdown. She says lockdown drill. We're going to practice 2 or 3 times. When we get through practicing so very much, so very well, then we're going to get back to our seats and we're going to do something called grounding techniques. The grounding techniques are going to be like, we're going to hug ourselves for doing a great job. We're going to count to 5, touching our fingers, bring us back to reality, back from the practice. And then afterwards, I'm going to say, boys and girls, I feel so good we practice safety. Do you? And open it up for questions and discussion. After we've discussed a little, then I'm going to tell them they were so good. And they're all going to wear a safety star home. And when they wear the safety star home, which if you notice represents that other star. Okay, Mama can know this is the day they practice. This is the day I talk to them. And when I give them that mama note, I'll make sure that they have seen this so they know to look for this. So what we've done is we connected the mamas or the guardians or grandmas with the school on safety. And it's been a practice and we've been excited about it. After that, we all take a deep breath and we say, hip, hip, hooray, hip, hip, hooray. We practice safety today. Now we're finished, but a teacher watches for whether or not a boy or girl or another adult in the room is acting a little different. Not eye contact's not quite as good. And if they need a little extra special help, you can take them aside or you can get guidance help. Okay, I was never mentioned active shooter.
Yeah, right.
Unless it's not necessary unless a child brings it up. And if so,
Right.
then I take them aside. I won't even continue to talk about that in a group. I don't see any need in it. I'll just say,
Yeah.
well, I understand and come here and we'll talk about that. And the middle school kiddos are very curious and they may have lots of questions, but you've got to allow for that. You've got to give them some time. So how do you start that? How do you open that up? And I'm just got a suggestion, and I'm sure there's a zillion others out there, but I have a suggestion that you either have writing prompts or discussions with your kids. Some kids are better writing and then you get everybody's answer. Some kids, you know, they won't write. So you're just going to have to open it into discussions. It's great if it's a small group. Sometimes you don't have that opportunity. It has to be a large group. I'm going to give you a couple of questions you could start with, and then you could come up with, I'm sure, many more that might be better suited to your classroom. First one is, what do you feel the purpose of a safety drill is? You've been in safety drills all your life. What do you think the purpose is? Why are we doing that? Are we just taking out time for instruction, or is there a real reason behind it? Okay, and then you answer that for me. Second one, do you feel you know what to do when they call a lockdown drill? Do you know what to do? If you're in the bathroom, do you know what to do? If you're in a classroom, do you know what to do? Do you feel confident because you've been doing this for years? Is this a new school to you? So you need to have a lot of instruction and tell me what that needs to be, because I can get that for you if you just make sure you let me know. because there's a lot of they want to look cool and be cool, but they're still maybe scared about certain areas and certain things. And does participating in a lockdown drill make you feel safer or not? Okay, now I also have a suggestion that everybody gets, I used to call them recipe cards, but they're index cards, and everybody gets to write down something they want to tell the teacher about lockdown drills. Now, if they want it to be anonymous, they don't have to sign it. If they don't want it to be anonymous, they can, but then they can all be put in an envelope or in a box, and then you get so much feedback. And then there's so many answers to questions or things I never thought of. Kids are so much more, they're so smart. Why not let them teach you what to tell them? And every class will have different types of questions. I also say high school and middle school. Now, those questions will work in high school also. High school and middle school will both, they both are so smart that they need to be, if you can, put some high school student and some parent on a safety team. You know, when you're planning the first protocol, when you're planning everything, they have a perspective that comes to the plate that nobody else brings. So if you get some high school students in, you get some middle school students, they bring in that perspective. Middle school and some high school even like competition. If you could say, we're going to have competition, we're going to see who. Now, I would say everyone that is, I'm not the type that it's an elitist thing when you have a competition. I like it where everyone that did a really good job gets like the key that says, you know, we have the key to safety outside the door. And then you get 5 keys, you don't do a homework. Whatever the reward system, I don't know. But so many keys because you were really quiet, you took it seriously. Because it gets to be a point where sometimes some kids may not want to take it seriously or take the time out from instruction. So you've got to do whatever is their currency, and you've got to figure out what to do. Now, we hadn't talked about this earlier, and I was going to throw this in. I don't know what school's going to look like this year. Okay, nobody knows what it's going to look like. I mean, bravo, pat on the back, all these teachers that did NTI, that you know, this was a brave new world. Reopening is a brave new world. When we talk about 30 days, you have to have a lockdown drill within the first 30 days of instruction. We don't know what that is. Those are flexible days. I don't know. I don't know when that's going to be. I just know the law says 30 days, and we will get more instruction from experts that know much more than I do. But I do know that it's all going to be a challenge. I know the mask is going to be a challenge. I know social distancing is going to be a challenge. I know lockdowns are a challenge, but we got to have conversations.
Lockdown drills. So we never want to talk to students about active shooter drills. That's only for staff. So with students, regardless of their developmental stage, grade they're in, we always want to put this in the context of a lockdown drill. So in case of any type of emergency. So as similar as we practice for tornadoes and fire drills, we want to practice lockdown drills for any type of emergency. And so doing this with, you know, regular practice, very clear communication, the practice over time will help give them a sense of confidence and support them in terms of not feeling the extreme anxiety that some students feel when we talk about, you know, very difficult and scary things, and particularly for the younger students, but also middle and high school students. Based on their experience, the communities they live in, these things can, be very scary and induce some traumatic stress. So I think it's really important that we make sure that we are talking with the students in terms of we're practicing for emergencies. And I think also, regardless of age, regardless of grade, that, you know, the teacher is always communicating their job is to help keep the students safe. And all of this happens in the context of a relationship that has hopefully already been established. With all content, it's so critical that, you know, we have cultures that allow for vulnerability, for people to share their fears, and because, I mean, that's a critical part of the plan, you know, that people are able to process this. And again, I think having the law enforcement involved in the planning, that can cultivate a sense of calm and security. And absolutely having the mental health professionals, the counselors, you know, involved in the process is going to be really key.
The biggest thing is trying to get somewhere where you can try to lock that door behind you. That's the number one best option. If you can't get there, at least get out of sight. Get somewhere that you can hide, and you would really have, somebody would really have to look for you to find you. But one of the things that I've seen being in schools is a lot of teachers leave their doors open during planning periods. With that, the door being open, if something does happen, those students, other teachers, other faculty members have another place they can escape to, be able to close that door and be behind a locked door, which is great. If they're maybe stuck in a bathroom, if that door is lockable, close that door and lock the door behind you. If you are stuck in a bathroom and you can't lock the door, even getting into a stall, standing up on a toilet and locking the door, those are all options you have. But the number one option is obviously getting into a room, has a lockable door, being able to put down the shade over the window, get into the blind corner, and be able to wait and be silent. That will be the number one option. But within each school is going to have different options for them to be able to go into. The biggest thing is having those options already prepared prior to. For us in law enforcement, one of the things we do is we do crisis rehearsal. If this happens, I'm going to do this. If this happens, I'm going to do that. So look around your school. Hey, if I'm here, I can go here. If I'm here, I can go here, and constantly write that software package of knowing if something goes wrong, I know I have this as plan A and this is plan B, and so on and so forth.
The only thing I'll add to that is part of that software package is if the teacher isn't planning and they hear something, simply go look. I'm not saying go search the school. I'm not saying, leave your hallway, but simply, maybe look out into the hallway and see if there is somebody out there that needs guidance in where they need to go. As we know, again, under stress, people kind of do some things that they wouldn't typically do in a normal everyday environment. And depending upon the school and the age frame of who's involved, you may need to give them physical guidance. You may take them by the hand and lead them in there, or if it's an older school, or older children in the school, then they know where they need to go. But having that adult presence or that teacher presence in the hallway may simply give them a little bit extra guidance on where they go and realize, hey, I can get in this room and it can be safe.
The biggest thing is trying to get out of sight. Whether you're hiding, and then if you can hide and move to a different position. One of the things that we push in law enforcement is looking for a better point of cover. When I say cover, that means something that's going to protect me from becoming a victim or a casualty. With that, if you're on a playground, if you're on a football field, it may just be going back to the run, hide, fight scenario. You running as far and fast as you can to an area where you can hide, and then hopefully you can move to a different area and eventually bound to a point where you can get behind a locked door. But in those scenarios, we know that there's not many advantages for the folks who are on the different end of this thing, but the biggest thing is trying to get out of sight. If we can get out of sight as fast as possible and hide, hopefully we can come out this thing a little bit better.
Stay please, stay please. Is everybody okay?
Yes, we're fine.
Do you have any injuries?
No injuries.
All of your students accounted for?
Yes.
All right, well, be patient. Stay in the room, and we'll have somebody stop by the room in just a minute, okay? Okay.
When law enforcement gets there, their main goal is to stop the threat, obviously. How they go about doing that it's not going to be there as a nice, opening statement of how are you today? It's going to be very direct, very authoritative, and to the point of they're there to get to a certain point. The only reason they're there is to stop that threat. So it may not sound like the normal nice police officer that you've always talked to. It's going to be that person that tells you to get on the ground or put your hands up or put your cell phone away. It's going to be very direct, it's going to be very loud, and it's going to be kind of chaotic. It's going to be to the point where you only want to obey with what they are going to say, for the simple fact that they don't know who's who when they get there.
Yeah, a lot of people are going to expect the police officer to come in there with a sense of empathy and want to tell everybody everything's going to be okay, but at that point, that is not the stage that the officers who are arriving on scene are going to be in. They are there to stop the threat and figure out where the threat is at. With that, the officers are under stress as well, especially too, they get that call, that dreaded call of this going on at the school. A lot of officers still have kids that are in school that may be their child's school. So we have to understand that things aren't going to be what our normal senses of police officers. Hello, hey, how are you doing? That's not going to be it. There are going to be a lot of boisterous commands. Some people may feel like they're being talked to as if they're the suspect, and that's just not the case. We're strictly trying to gain compliance figure out what is going on, and then once we figure that out, we'll get to the empathy mode. But for that certain point, it's not going to be very friendly. It's there to get business done. Within a lockdown, everyone has a responsibility to get the information out and get the school under a state of lockdown. So a lot of people may say, hey, that's a principal's job or that's a counselor's job. It is everyone's job to maintain the safety of those students. So every teacher needs to have a next man up mentality where, hey, the principal is out of school. I know for a fact that I can do it. I know the entire process, and that needs to be school body wide. I mean, every person is a school, and not just our teachers, our custodians, whoever's in the school as an adult, and that may be something that we can drive down to some of our more responsible students. Hey, we know how to get into lockdown if something happens. We're not waiting for one person to come in and to bless this thing off. We can get the school under lockdown and stop this from happening.
A lot of the teachers and the principal staff have radios now. Something I didn't mention earlier, but that ability, and it goes hand in hand with who can initiate something. If I can talk on a radio, then I can pass that information out to all the other staff that's in the building. That gives the opportunity to where maybe not one person there. It empowers everybody. And again, it goes back to the pre-planning. Who can do it? Who can do this? Make it as part of your faculty training. Everybody has to do it, and everybody get a turn at doing it in your drills, so that you don't have the same voice over and over trying to do something, that you don't get used to that and to start getting used to that voice and saying, nah, I've heard that voice 100 times. No, let's get somebody's voice that's different, maybe a different tone inflection, different stress level, something that's going to be a little different that catches that person's ear and gives them that ability to initiate that.
Every school, by law, is supposed to have an emergency operating plan, and that emergency operating plan is best crafted when you have your first responders around the table along with your educators. And it doesn't need to be a complicated thing. It doesn't need to be 500 pages and stuff. It could be just a page or two on what you're going to do and who's going to be involved with the responsibilities of whatever an emergency comes into play here. So that's important to be able to set out the roles of what's going to happen. They need to also be making sure that they are involved with the incident command structure, that when law enforcement arrives on a scene that's a crime scene, then they're in charge. If it's a fire situation, then the highest ranking officer in the fire department's there. That the principal on the campus would then become a part of what they call the unified command anytime that we have an emergency. Then once the police officers leave and then once the fire officials leave, then it goes back to the principal. So it's a very simplistic thing, using common language, not a whole lot of codes and stuff. So it's very important for them to understand that. It's important to understand that by law they have to have that plan. It has to be reviewed annually with their site-based counsel, and then all new teachers need to know the entire plan from the start to the finish. All of the current teachers that have already had that training need to be ramped up on any kind of changes. One of the components of your emergency operating plan would be dealing with lockdowns, and of course that's part of this video and what we're trying to produce here. The Center for School Safety, in collaboration with several agencies and several of our consultants, came up with a list of items to consider and to discuss with your first responders when you're trying to craft your lockdown plan. And so I think it'd be very good for the viewers and for the administrators and their first responders to check that list out, see what's apropos for their specific school, and to see what they can do to make their lockdown procedures just a little bit better. When you look at the emergency operating plan, I think it's very important for the staff to understand that this is incredibly important. That chances are they're not going to have a major emergency, but when they do, they need to be very well prepared, and not to look at this emergency management plan as being some kind of compliance. It needs to be a commitment to doing things right, to practicing their drills right, to making sure that the teachers convey to the kids that this is serious business here, be it a fire drill, be it an earthquake drill, be it a severe weather drill, or be it a lockdown drill. They need to take these things seriously, and then it becomes, the more often that they do these drills, the more it becomes second nature. And when it's second nature, then you can really stop the loss of life or injuries by being able to do things the right way the first time.
Let's don't leave it for these new teachers or new teachers to our school to know what to do. And some of our teachers that have been teaching for a long time maybe didn't do lockdowns the same way we would like for them to be done here now. So let's have those conversations. Let's train before it happens. Let's maybe all the fourth grade, maybe all the English teachers will say, we're going to do our intro to lockdown drills this week. Okay. And then we're going to get together at our planning period and we're going to say, how did that go? Well, really well with my class, but I had a little trouble with this class. Well, when I have those kids or whatever, I'll do this, or this worked for me. And I didn't even know I was going to do that. All that. I don't know. It's such a good synergy when you get together and you talk about it. And you mentioned the what ifs too. I think they need to talk about, okay, what if I have this child? You know, what if I have this child? What are you going to do if you have this child that needs this accommodation? What am I going to do if I have this child that needs this accommodation? What are we going to do to make sure everybody feels safe and that we know how to do it and we don't get frustrated when the lockdown doesn't say drill? Now, every drill should be announced and not a surprise. Okay, did we hear that? Okay, that's good. That's good. That's really good. That's so exciting, because when it doesn't say this is a drill or practice, and see, I'm tending toward early elementary and elementary hearing the word lockdown practice because they understand practice better than they do drill, and drill sounds kind of negative. You see what I'm saying? Every drill is a teacher knows we're going to have it. I mean, they might not know the minute, but they know it's today and it's going to happen. So they're prepared and they know it's a drill. And even if you say to the parents this week, we're going to be practicing the drills this week, then they are not scared if they see on a telephone that some kids texted or they've sent out a note, we're in a drill. Yeah, I know. I knew you were going to do that. It doesn't have the rumor mill started so much. Then every time you've got through debriefing, you change your plan. Our plans, our safety plans they have to address all these things you've changed. And every time we have a drill, have one in the classroom, have another drill at lunchtime in the cafeteria. What are you doing lunchtime? What about when we're getting off the buses in the morning? You know, I thought about, when kids are milling around in the morning, they're not going to be milling around in the morning. I mean, we're going to have 6 feet between them. Yay, I guess. So, I don't know how that's going to look, but however that's going to look, let's have them at varied times with different kiddos so kids don't get used to using, say, I always follow Sammy because he knows what to do. You know what I'm saying? So we have to have these conversations. They've got all this information has to go back into the plan, and it has to be fluid and it has to be ever evolving. It needs to be a habit. It needs to be a habit. It needs to be where we've done it so many times in so many different places that it's just like that hand goes out if you stop to click. Your hand goes out. You don't even know. There's nobody in the seat. Your hand goes out because you're helping them stop. It's a habit. You do habitually what's going to keep kids safe and what's going to keep you safe. And then you've done it enough that when the adrenaline starts, because it didn't say drill, and we have the real thing for whatever reason, maybe nothing terrible, but for whatever reason, we just go into automatic mode and we do what's right. Now, we have to do all that without showing fear, because our kids get that from us. But I'm just going to say, to end this session right here, hip, hip, hooray, hip, hip, hooray. We talked about school safety today. First of all, let me tell you how excited I am that I'm working with a focus group, a lockdown focus group, teachers and school administrators from elementary schools that are working with me right now. We're Skyping. We're not Skyping, we're Zooming. Okay, we have these little Zoom meetings, and we're meeting together to come up with some ideas to share with others to lessen anxiety that will be age appropriate and will be appropriate to disabilities and many other things. And hopefully we can get these ideas out to other people. These will just be suggestions and ideas, but we're excited about that.
One of the things that I think we've been trying to do for years here at the center, and I've been here for 19 years, we're trying to be a one-stop shop for them. You make the call here for us, and we will help you with whatever it is. Now, when we're talking about emergency operating plans, we have really tremendous consultants that work with us that are trained in just about every facet of emergency management, either if it's prevention, mitigation, if it's preparation, if it's response, if it's recovery. We've got it all. And all the schools need to do is call our office, and I will assign somebody to work with the school if they want us to review their plans, if they want us to help them create the plans. And of course, right now, because of COVID, we can't do face-to-face, but we can sure as heck do the Zooming and do a face-to-face approach with that thing, and we can really help them out with that.
In response to active shooter situations, several years ago, the Kentucky State Police developed a program called the Safe Schools Program, during which we have a 3-hour training. We offer a 3-hour training as part of a professional development for teachers, school administrators, and staff. It is our job, and we find it's our responsibility to make sure that our teachers are equipped with the proper information and experiences to keep our students safe. You know, oftentimes we look at it and we sit back and we don't rise to the level of our expectations. Unfortunately, we fall to the level of our training. And with that in mind, we've developed a very a situation-based approach. We have a PowerPoint presentation that talks about the history of active shooter incidents and how to survive those. We don't just stop there though. We move on and we actually put people through situational based learning. We put them in classrooms in situations that they may face in an active shooter incident so that they can have the best chance of surviving and keeping our students safe moving forward. We want to put people in a real world type situation in their school. You can sit back and say, you know, in a stressful environment or if an active shooter situation occurs, here's what we are going to do. But until you actually walk through the steps in your own school, develop your own plan on how you will respond if something was to happen, that's where we see the value in this training. It's not something you go to a conference and we just talk about. It's something where you may be in your own classroom whenever something ends up happening, and so you can understand where the exits are, different problems that may arise, different escape routes. Can you use your windows? How do your doors lock? Do they actually have do you have to use a key, or does it have some other locking mechanism, so that you understand at your school and in your classroom the best way for you to survive?
So when you're thinking about this plan that I'm talking about, I'm not talking about some elaborate plan that you got to put together, you got to write it down, you got to go from A to Z in chronological order, or anything that difficult. Actually, it's pretty simple. You know, and again, I go back to the analogy when we train cops. That's what I do. We try to teach them, number one, to be situationally aware, and that's just up and alert. It's not hyper vigilant, expecting something to happen horrible all the time. It's just being aware, looking for the changes in the environment. You know, teachers, when they walk into a school, and you heard me talk about this last year, I'll say it again because I think it's important, they see what the norm looks like. It's just like when you go to Walmart, or you go to the mall, or you go to the movie theater, there's an ebb and there's a flow of human beings. And there's certain things they're doing, there's certain things they're not doing, and most human beings are pretty good at picking up on the changes. So what I'm talking about, when you come to school, there's a baseline behavior in students and teachers. But for teachers, the first part of the plan is to trust your instincts. When you just to be, oh, you know what, when I see something that's out of place, I'm going to be deliberate about paying attention to it. I'm going to be inquisitive. I'm going to ask questions. It's things as simple as that sometimes that can stop these things, and you know, putting your attention where it needs to be. On the other part of the plan, are the plans that you have. It's what you do when you get out of the car. How do you walk to the school? Are you on your phone? Are you texting and trying to catch up with things and all the stuff we all do between your car and the school? If you're on monitoring duty, are you on your phone? Are you talking to a colleague? These are things we love to do, especially if you're like me. I love people. You love talking to people, and we can get distracted from the things we need to do. And part of the plan is being delivered about saying, hey, you know what, when I'm here, when I get to this school, I need to have my head up. I need to be paying attention to what's going on in the parking lot. And I need to be very deliberate about if I'm on duty and I'm at that, if I'm stationed at an entrance, I'm just paying attention. That's a plan. I'm looking for, you know, that stick in the mud, so to speak. You know, I had some training about the Secret Service years ago, and they talked about how they looked at crowds during presidential details, and they said it's pretty easy. You know, you think about the ocean, you think about the tide rolling in and rolling out, and all we're looking for is the stick in the sand. And most people, if they understand that, they've got to hone in onto that, pay attention to it, take action. The other parts of making a plan is that when-then thinking. If I'm in the classroom and crisis rehearsal, if you will, we teach officers, if I'm in the classroom and I think about it from time to time, hey, if I heard gunshots right now, what would I do? Right now, I'm in class and I'm teaching, well, we've trained you what to do. Shut that door, get those kids in a corner, everybody's quiet, you pull that shade, and you wait for help. But that's a plan, as simple as it is, as simple as it sounds.